What does it take for us to build workplaces and a world that is fit for the future? A question that plagues many a leader and many an organization. How do we learn from our experiences? Are we shaping ourselves and our workplaces to be fit for the future? What does it take to invest in people and nurture success? How do we ensure that our investments in diversity, equity, and inclusion are delivering to the intended goals? Are we seeing the very invisible responsibility that most employees carry, that of being caregivers? What does it take to build a caregiver friendly workplace? Are leaders caregivers? What can leaders and organizations learn from caregivers and their experiences? How do we create safe spaces that enable inclusion? Is this something that is holding, especially women, back from the C suite? We are delighted to bring to you a series of conversations around the idea of building future fit corporates. Juzer is a senior management executive with an entrepreneurial spirit who leads business to growth and market differentiation by employing his knowledge of marketing and customer experience strategies. He has a motivational management style with a proven history of building, guiding, and retaining high performance teams to develop and implement strategies for accelerated growth. He's a seasoned asset management marketing leader with close to 2 decades of experience across two global asset management companies, DSP BlackRock and Franklin Templeton. He has co-drafted the mutual fund industry's advertising guidelines in 2011 in partnership with senior leadership teams comprising of industry leaders, senior industry policy influencers, and senior officials of SEBI. The more exciting thing is his hobbies. His hobbies include collecting antique lithographs, Indian and Middle Eastern subjects, reading Indian history. He is also a volunteer with Khaki Tours as an ambassador of Mumbai and takes walking tours in the city of Mumbai. Truly an exciting passion to have. Juzer, born and brought up in Mumbai, he's married and has 2 teenage children. That should explain a lot of our gray hair. His wife Zainab is an animation filmmaker who graduated from NID in Ahmedabad in 2001. She illustrates for children's books and pursues her hobby as a watercolor illustrator. Thank you very much for joining us in this conversation today, Juzer.
Pleasure.
What is your interest in our topic of discussion today?
So, having having had team members in the past and even today, I have a fair amount of women who are part of my team. 2 women at home, actually three. My mom's also there with me. Uh, I it's always been an area of interest because I do. I've invariably felt that I think the quality of talent that you see that exists with women, okay, I think, and when you compare that to where do they what do they really finally achieve in life and where do they really land, in that long career path, I think that's a huge gap. And I think to me, it's a problem that needs addressing. Now, yeah, obviously people can have different strategies, and you can think of different ways to do this. But to answer your question, I think that's the core area of interest. That how do you make sure, and forget about whether you're a leader or you're not a leader. I think just as a human being, I mean, how do you make sure that that parity can be bought in human life itself. Yeah.
If you were to look back at your career and tap into your experiences, can you think of an incident where you were deeply impacted by certain challenges that your women colleagues may have had?
So several, I mean, it'll be difficult to pinpoint really one or two, but I think, and I can talk about, uh, and I don't obviously want to take names, but I can talk about somebody in my own organization who's part of my team, and I invariably feel that she's taking a lot more of the load within the partnership. She is she is taking a humongous amount of load, in that in this journey, and also considering the fact that she is actually a single child, right? So she's got no siblings, and therefore then it becomes dual responsibility for the individual. And I am a single child, so I know how it can feel. But for her, it becomes very, very difficult, because you've got the home and the family that you've kind of built over the last, say, 15 years with your partner, your husband, and then you've got the family at home, right? uh, and I mean, I just do feel that she just puts in far too much, unfortunately, in that partnership. And let me tell you, I mean, I've got to a point of actually even I'm having a conversation with her. I said, I mean, how the hell do you manage this? Because you can make out, I mean, it's like simple things, like when a person walks into your office, or into your room, and the person is happy, you can make out that the person's happy. But when a person walks in with a lot going on in your head, then you know that there is a problem at the background. I mean, perhaps that comes with a little bit of experience and age, but it's very evident, right? So I think, and it does impact me a lot. It does impact me a lot. Yeah.
What do you think are the distress signals? Do you think that she is at a risk of burnout, or she's at the risk of quitting her
Yeah,
job?
both. I think both. I think you know the quitting the job, I think, is something that has happened, several times in the past also, where you've and as you were kind of doing this introduction, one thing that came, to my mind, and is that whenever it comes to who's going to take that step back, it's unfortunately always the woman. Okay. And the question in my mind has always been why. Because it's very difficult. I mean, you know, for all you may know, the woman's actually a lot more talented. I mean, I'll probably sound a little blatant to say that, well, the woman actually may, in reality, may have done very well in their careers, better than their male partners, right? But invariably in that journey, it's always the woman who's got to take the back seat. And I think that's something that needs, and as I was preparing for this conversation, Bhavana, and is that I think we generally tend to always rely on this natural theory of evolution, right? कि भाई 100-200 साल में ये सब ठीक हो ही जाएगा. But this is not a biological evolution. If it was a biological evolution, then Darwin's theory will come to play. This is about the mind, okay? And
Mm.
that, I don't think, that needs to get corrected. And sometimes that correction may need to be even forceful. Sometimes you got to make sure that you consciously uh, you know either do that extra bit for the person in the opposite gender, or you step back yourself a little bit, right? But I think if you don't do that, uh, I think we'll never come. I mean, this will always become great theory conversation. Perhaps 20 years down the line, maybe you and I may be doing another conversation on Sati Caregiver, saying that kya karna chahiye life mein. But that's not the solution. That's really not the solution. I think that's where I feel that I mean, you know we need to we need to we need to take conscious steps to make that change happen. I mean, and that when you take that step for a period of time, you know you may need to step back, you may have impact, you may have a situation that, well, so it's like saying that, well, if you had uh, an important project happening in the organization, and it was being led by a woman, but you know that she has a certain caregiving responsibility in the background, which is taking a little more time than necessary. How many of us are really going to say that, okay, fine, I'll delay the project?
Mm.
you
It's
know
hard.
yeah,
It's
it's hard,
difficult.
it's very hard. But if you don't do that, it will never become part of your subconscious thinking. Today, if you know, for something to become subconscious, you have to make the conscious effort first, and it's only after a while. It's like practice, right? I mean, you make a conscious effort of practicing, and then subconsciously, be it sport or be it any other activity, things will start flowing. Like, I mean, today, if you say that Roger Federer has one of the best forehands in the game of tennis, it's now subconscious. But at some point in time when he started that journey, it would have been a very conscious effort to improve his forehand, right? Similarly, I think, you how many times are we going to say that, well, okay, you know what, I think, uh, she is the best person to do the job, but because she has a problem at home, am I ready to take that two steps back and say that, hey, you know what, let her come back and we'll then get it done. But if you don't do that, then I think, we'll I mean, it's going to be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that idea, but that can be sometimes be not so pragmatic. Let's just say that, to say that you cannot delay. Sometimes there are things that are that must be done. You cannot necessarily wait for even the best talent because you really want it off the ground. Let's say that. So, in your experience, can you think of some of the initiatives that in your organization you may have taken to support individuals, whether they are men or women, but most likely women, uh, when they have additional responsibilities of either caring for young children or family members with special needs or older adults increasingly now?
So, I want to step back and talk about the point that you said, that, you got to be pragmatic. And I have a contrarian view on that, Bhavana, that, eh, the more, I mean, if one had to view change with the lens of logic, then in my view, sometimes the speed of change would not have happened in the way it is happening right now. Like, I mean, look at technology, for example, right? And I'm actually reading this damn good book about on Elon Musk right now. Here's a guy who, when he was in school, apparently thought that, one should go to Mars. Now,
Right.
if you would have probably said that, well, this is the most illogical idea that the child is actually having in his mind. But if you don't give that space, perhaps this idea would never have got executed. I mean, he genuinely feels now that, well, he's probably a couple of years away from actually having setting up a colony, actually, in Mars, right? Now, now obviously that's one end of the spectrum. But my other end of the spectrum is that, you know i- if you look at everything with the lens of pragmatism, practicality, uh, then they never get supported, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've had a situation in my own life where I know that when in 2017, 15 actually, my dad fell ill, and then, he nearly for like a period of 3 months, he was like, we had to take him to several doctors and so on and so forth. uh, but I don't think my manager ever told me that, hey, you know what, Juzer, I think give up this project. Or there were lots of things on my head at that point in time, right? My manager never said that, hey, Juzer, your dad's not well. Uh, we support you, but you know what, we got to get this thing done quickly. So why don't we take it away from you and give it to somebody else? It never happened.
Mm.
So my question is then, why should it be? Why does the lens of pragmatism and logic and all of that come into play because it's a woman in question? And I want to challenge that. And I've so I mean, lots of times, organizations say that, oh, we're uh, diversity and inclusion, so on and so forth. Then you have the lens of saying that, you know what, we like diversity and inclusion, but we'll wait for the right candidate in that diversity and inclusion bracket to come our way, and then we'll hire. And I don't agree on that at all. I mean, I've had, you know I don't know how far this conversation is going to get amplified, but I've had conversations, in the boardroom, to say that, no, if you want your organization and the people in your organization to be sensitive to diversity and inclusion, then it's like medicine, right? You have to take it up. It's only then when your people will get comfortable with that situation. Okay. So similarly, I don't agree actually with the fact that everything should be looked at the level of pragmatism. And yes, of course, talent is important. I'm not saying, and I don't think that the women we've seen so far who've come up obviously their career graphs and done very well for themselves, and there are now several examples, right? Indian, global, so on and so forth, right? I think there were no favors given over there, not
Right.
at all. I mean, it'd be stupid to even think about that, right? But you must keep in mind that there was an opportunity that was given,
That's
and
right.
you have to open that door of opportunity, uh, and take that. I'm not using the word risk because that's incorrect, because then you come back to that whole logic and practicality. You've got to open the door and to give that person space, right? It's just the way that when you have a you have a mental issue, I think normal parlance, you say, why don't you give this guy a little bit of more space, right? Give the person a little bit more space, right?
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you don't do that, you and I will have this conversation again after 5 years, and we'll still be debating on the fact that, well, what change do we think we need to do in in India? No.
Thank you for saying everything that you said, Juzer. You made my heart sing. I'm glad to hear that from someone else, and I'm glad that I'm not having to sell something like this, because there are days when I feel, it feels like a hard sell to some people who might think efficiency, pragmatism, etc., and might therefore have a short-term view on the
Yeah,
subject.
yeah, no.
Um, if you were to think of a couple of things that an organization that is embarking on this journey uh, could do. So, for example, let's say an organization has not given this topic enough thought and says, okay, let's go down this path. What do you think ab initio an organization can do?
So firstly, I think, let me tell you, all organizations are thinking about it now. Whether they are
Great.
thinking about it, from their hearts, are they thinking about it that, it's a great conversation to be part of, some agenda topic, right? Diversity. I
Right,
mean, it's become like, it's like ESG or one of those things, right?
right,
It's good to have it in your list of,
right,
pillars and so on and so forth. I think the question is, who's biting the bullet,
right.
right? And that's the difference. If you are not
Mm,
ready to bite the bullet, it's great to have all of. So I was recently, and again, I won't name the organization. I was at a global organization. We'd gone to the office basically, to some meeting, and the telephone receptionist was somebody from the transgender community, right?
right.
Very evident that, and I actually, after the meeting, I took half an hour out and met the HR of that company. I said, how did you do it? And the answer was very simple. He says, Juza, we had a choice of getting the regular telephone receptionist that you can get. I mean, there are
Mm,
enough. You have a certain image of a telephone receptionist, right?
mm,
But we knew that if you're going to walk the talk,
mm,
then you've got to say that no, this role, no, will go to somebody from this particular segment of society, because I need to give this person the opportunity, right? And trust
mm,
me,
mm.
Bhavna, so this person is also now the official photographer in that organization, where they, whenever
Oh,
they have
wow.
events in the organized, I mean, they're a global company, so there'll be several of these events that could be happening where they could call corporate clients, this, that, the other. The person is now the official photographer for that organization. And let me tell you that, other than the 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 external appearance of that person, there was not one bit that I could point a flaw at to say that the person either didn't treat me well, or didn't go through the proper process of kind of checking me into the organization, did not give me the I card, was not courteous, did not make me sit in the reception to say that, sir, why don't you take a seat? I'm going to have somebody kind of come across and meet you. So I think And hats off to the organization, right? I mean, absolutely phenomenal, because that's how change happens. Now, you won't believe it, when I saw that, it gave me so much of confidence that, you've got to make the change. If you don't make the change, you can stay where you are, and the things will continue, right? ये सब ये this is, these things don't happen, these things don't happen um, on their own.
Yeah.
Society is such way. I mean, we're a diverse culture, right? When, unlike the West, where there is a high degree of uniformity in their cultures, it's not the same
Yeah.
here in India, right? We're a
Yeah.
diverse culture, so there's an additional layer of complexity that comes into this. But I feel that, well, if you don't do it, it won't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, a great example, and thank you for sharing that. And congratulations to that organization for setting a role, setting the representation, because that gives confidence to so many of the others to say,
Yeah.
okay, it can possibly be done.
Yeah.
And I hope that many organizations will follow suit. Having said that, I think that one of the things that is currently challenging organizations post the pandemic is the challenge of working from home and the balance of working at the workplace. And at the same time, women in general and caregivers, particularly, could definitely benefit from policies of working from home, flexibility, etc. What, in your experience, have been the challenges and some of the actions that you as an organization may have taken to strike the balance?
So I think, if that's one thing that came out positive from the pandemic, was to say that, well, every time somebody tells you I'm working from home, he or she is not enjoying themselves, right? I mean, if somebody had said that, and people have worked from home even in before the pandemic.
Right.
I mean, I'm an old school manager, right? So my initial first impression is that means obviously he's got something happening at
Watching
home.
cricket.
Yeah, watching cricket, or he just wants to take it, he or she just wants to take it easy. So,
Yeah.
so I think that was a big positive that came out from the pandemic, that, well, because everybody was at home, then you realize that, no, actually work can happen
Yeah.
comfortably and efficiently from home. Now, as an organization, there are obviously, we are encouraging people to come to work, okay, because I think there is a significant benefit when you interact and engage with people in person.
Yes.
But nobody is saying that, well, if you didn't come to work on all
Mm.
days, and you did have a certain number of days, maybe in a month or in a week, uh, you know working from home, I think it's perfectly acceptable for us today. I mean, I know that, I think globally, I think Franklin's now saying minimum, what, I think 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. uh, but um, but now in India, and for people actually don't take 3 days. Maximum I'd probably see somebody saying that, okay, sir, maybe on a Thursday or a Friday, you typically have a large number of people who kind of do tend to work from home, and I think it's fine, because the weekends close by, and it just makes it a little bit more comfortable. But I think uh, we 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 don't tell people now that, well, please do work from home. But if you
Mm.
want to work from home, I think there's absolutely no restriction. There's absolutely no restriction, unless and until, I mean, there is a specific ask. If there is a senior person coming to the organization, or there is a important meeting to be attended, then it's a different story. But other than that, I think we're very flexible with people now. Yeah.
So, in this flexibility, there may be some challenges for certain managers. For example, I was talking, and somebody pointed out to me saying, if women ask for this flexibility, and let's say you're busy at home, working at home, what if the manager walks around with a new project and is looking for hiring for his new project, and chooses to ask or see people on the floor or whatever around the office, and because you're not visible, you might miss on the opportunities. What do you think are implications for managers and organizations in such a case?
I think I would then say that both managers and organizations are completely short-sighted and perhaps even blind. Okay, because projects should not be given to people because you see them or you don't see them. I think projects should be given to people because you know and you have the confidence that they will get executed efficiently. I think
Right.
that should be your principle, right? I mean, it's like
Mm,
hiring somebody for a job. I mean, just because you bump into the person every day in the lift in your building or in your housing complex, would you hire him as a manager in your organization? The answer is no, because you don't know whether the person will be efficient or not efficient.
yeah.
The same should be applied. Same applies for project. Now again, as I said, now uh, would these mindsets exist among people? Maybe they do. I don't know. Uh, have I experienced it in my organization? The answer is a categoric no. Okay,
Right.
it doesn't work. I mean, we have like in a global organization like Franklin, a lot of executives who actually predominantly or rather completely are doing global work for global offices, supporting global offices. I mean, they really perhaps don't even need to come to office here
Right.
in Mumbai. Because I mean, imagine if you're doing calls from say 6 or 5 in the morning because you're supporting uh, you know the eastern part of the world, and you finish off your day at like 4 in the afternoon, then you perhaps don't need to come to office. What I mean, I know so many people who are actually supporting global offices in Europe and America, and your first call only begins at 4:30 in the evening, and you finish off by pretty much nearly 2 in the morning. I mean, I know
Right.
managers who sit here till 2 in the morning, but
Right.
yeah. So I don't think the in I see you in office, therefore you deserve better. I think that's a I would feel sorry for the manager and the organization both then.
There is a lot that is said about the coffee machine, the vending machine conversations, and the subtle culture that is built in an organization because people have a certain quality of interaction, and
Yeah,
that remote working and virtual
yeah,
teams
yeah.
are harder to build an organizational culture from.
Yeah.
So, what is it that leaders can do when there is a significant population that does choose to work remotely or work from home, yet there is a responsibility to build a sense of belonging and a culture?
So I think firstly, Bhavana, you must understand that I don't think there's anybody, at least who I know, who's saying that I am 100% working from home.
Right.
Right. I think we're well past that, right? So now there may be degrees of working from home. Somebody may say I'll work 1 day in a week from home. Somebody may say 2 days I'll work from home, but nobody says that I'm working from home every day. So I think that physical interaction and that interpersonal engagement, which obviously adds a tremendous amount of to the culture of the organization, is getting taken care of in them. Now again, as I said, you can't have everything. So you
Right.
can't say that, well, I'm going to get the person every day to office, but then the person is also going to get an opportunity, to kind of better manage caregiving responsibility. It doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
That way. You will think about yourself pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
If you had a caregiving responsibility which was rather critical, you would have to take a day off. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we do. But today, at least you know that, well, if I have a critical caregiving responsibility at home, I don't need to take the day off. I can actually do the caregiving as well as be attending office and kind of contributing to the organization.
Hmm.
Uh, so I feel that you've as organizations evolve now, think about it, the pandemic was a biological evolution that we all faced, right? I mean,
Right.
in terms of the way we behave, the way we interact, and so on and so forth. I guess it's probably helped trigger this evolution to say that, well, uh, even if I don't physically see the person all 5 days, I am at least interacting and seeing the person on screen. Now, one of the things that we tell you we've done compulsorily, and this is something that as leaders, we insist is to put cameras on,
Mm.
because at least then I know. I mean, one, obviously I know that that the person is there on the opposite side. Two is the fact that at least I mean, today I when I'm seeing you on camera today right now, I can sense what's going on in your mind right now.
Sure. Sure.
Correct. So I think I now, yes, would I have wanted to do this conversation in person,
Yeah.
with you? Yeah, of course, it would have been fantastic. But we've got to be efficient. We want to try and get scale, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So I think you got to naturally try and build that balance,
Yeah.
right? Yes, you may need to give up on something,
Yeah.
okay, but that's fine. I mean, that's the way the world works. So you give up something, then you take something in with you.
Yeah. So, there used to be a lot of programs that were done in terms of building managerial capability and leadership skills, in which, people were taught to manage performance and manage their teams in a certain way.
Mm.
As the world is changing and as people, need different accommodations or flexibility, the management style or managerial capabilities should also shift slightly.
Yeah.
What would you teach some of the young managers in terms of what are the things to be mindful of as managing the new age?
I think more than old managers teaching young managers, I think the reverse is actually true. I think the young managers
Nice.
can actually teach a lot to the old managers. I'm an old school manager, right? So for me, sometimes it's like crazy things like saying that, well, I need to see the person in office at 9 o'clock, right? I mean,
Right.
I will be honest, right? I mean, when I started my career and as a manager and as a team leader, these were idiosyncrasies you carry with
Yes.
you, because that's
Well,
the way you've seen the world operate, that's the way you've seen your managers operate, and then you carry that trend with you, right? But I mean, I've had people come and sit me down. I've had my team members come and sit me down that and tell me that, sir, just because I don't come to office at 9:30 doesn't mean that I'm not delivering on what you ask me to deliver,
right.
right? So have you ever had a manager tell his or her junior, say that, hey, you know what, you send me that mail at 2 in the morning, do one thing, why don't you come at 11:30 in the morning the next day? No, you
Yeah.
expect the person to come at 9 in the morning. So I don't think that I need to teach the newer managers, because I think the newer managers are far well equipped. I think they understand productivity, far better than old school managers. For us, and I probably speak for myself, I don't want to say us, it's for me, that there was a time when you would evaluate productivity saying that, bhai, ye banda 9 baje aata hai aur 6 baje jata hai, fantastic, bahut productive hai. But that myth got busted, and thrown out of the window in the pandemic, right? I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
And or brownie points for staying in the office extra few hours.
yeah,
Right.
but I'm saying, what is the brownie point? what
Yeah.
is the what is the brownie point that you want to give your
Well,
team members?
sometimes people say that this is a good performer or this is a person who has great potential because this person, stays in office
I
still.
mean, come on, Bhavana, come on. I mean, there are half the world is mentoring and leading members in other parts of the world.
Right.
So why? I mean, where is this conversation coming from? So I mean, imagine if your manager was sitting out of, say Dubai or out of London.
Right.
What do you expect? I mean,
Yeah.
what does your manager expect? I mean, is he expecting that he should be seeing you in office every day at 9 o'clock, and when you swipe the card, should there be a ping on his mobile phone and or a what and an SMS going to him saying that Juzer Tambawalla came to office at 9 o'clock in the morning? The answer is no. I mean, the answer is, so I think, as old school managers, I think we've got to unlearn a lot actually, not a little bit. We've got to unlearn a lot, because I think the focus and the emphasis has to be on what you deliver, and with what level of efficiency. I mean,
Right.
it's like, okay, so I mean, I'll give you a interesting example. It's like between between a person who's an athlete, who's a sprinter who runs only 100 meters versus somebody who runs the marathon. I
Right.
mean, right now, in my view, would you say that, well, because you only run for 10 seconds odd, are you inefficient? And the guy who runs 42 kilometers is very good? No, the answer is no.
They're
He's
just
damn good. He's damn good at running 42 kilometers, and you're damn good at running. I mean, somebody did an, I think there was the, a WhatsApp message, a forward that I got, that apparently who's the 100 meter who's Usain
symbol.
Bolt. He in his life, okay, the number of races that he has run for 100 meters in his life has apparently only run some 3.5 or 4 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, or probably maybe even less. So
Yeah.
but now would you say that, well, he's actually a inefficient guy? The answer is no. He's done
Yeah.
damn well for himself.
Yeah. The question is to measure against what is the performance metric? What
Yeah,
is it?
it's about the performance metrics. It's about I mean, now let me get you closer to home. You know, institutional sales guys versus retail sales guys. An institutional sales guy is saying that, well, okay, I'm doing 6 calls a day, and I probably collect close to about 100 crores rupees every day. But
Right.
a retail sales guy does 6 calls a day, but perhaps pulls in, say, 1,000 SIPs every day.
Right.
Now, who is more efficient?
Right.
I mean, should I say that uh, the institutional sales guy is very efficient because the 100 crores came, but and it's not sticky money. It will leave me in
Yes.
3 days time from a liquid fund, or 5 days time from a liquid fund.
Right.
But this person got me 1,000 SIPs, which stayed with me for 8.5 years. Now, both are important, right?
Totally.
So I think you need to be very clear on what's the role that the your team member is supposed to perform, and just keep focused on that. Leave the rest of the
Noise.
noise around. It doesn't make a difference.
Yes. Coming back to the point that we do wish for, diverse thinking, and there is also an observation that women who eventually make it to the C-suite
Yeah.
tend to think like most other men who have made it to the C-suite,
Give me an example.
because they may have had to go through the rigors and of expectations to fall in a certain mold, that a good leader is like this, that's when you get promoted, a good leader behaves like that, and therefore there might be a certain mold of who a leader is, and most people who fit that mold over a period of time, men and women, make
Yeah.
it through the
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah. Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
Now, our initial goal was that we will be more innovative and we will be more sustainable if we can have diversity of thought, and if we can work outside our comfort zone. So, if people can be thinking different things, and they could be, not necessarily in the same mold. Uh, how do you think that organizations can be mindful of ensuring leaders are actually from diverse life experiences and are able to state them without the fear of being judged?
Uh, so I'm actually a little. Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised at this question that you're asking me, because I'm going to post a rhetorical question to you.
Okay.
It will be: do you think that if an organization over a period of its 50-year journey had 10 male leaders leading the organization, were they all the same?
I don't know. It's quite likely that they were all very different
They were
and they
all
were,
very different. Yeah, they
yeah.
were all, yeah, perfect, right? And that's the point I want to make to you. I think, irrespective of whether it is a male leader or a female leader, I think the leader will get selected basis what's the kind of, and when you get into the C-suite of an organization, it's about what's the kind of customer and shareholder value that you can drive. right? I
Right.
mean, that's the one line metric that, organizations, when they select a leader, will want to look at, right? uh, and I think what you need to change for sure is to say that, hey, you know what, I've had in the last 50 years, 10 male leaders, therefore, and that I've been successful, the organization has been successful, therefore the 11th leader has to be a male person. That,
Mm,
I think, is an incorrect way, completely incorrect way of thinking, because I think uh, that, I mean, when women do reach that level, and I mean, there are so many examples of, the Indra Nuis and the Sheryl Sandbergs of the world. uh, they obviously come with their own character, they come with their own style of thinking and approaching things. They are tough in their own ways. I mean, we have we have a woman finance minister, we have the SEBI regulator who's a woman, we've had so many women leaders. I mean, look at who've led banks. I mean, are you saying that, I mean, are we stupid on our part to believe that, well, they were they people think of them differently from their male counterparts who've led their organizations in the past or will lead their organizations in the future. So I I I I mean, I don't know if people really do think that just because it's a woman leader who will come and lead this organization, it will be very different. In my view, it will always be different when a new leader comes, and that you should stop at that,
mm.
rather than really thinking about whether it is a male leader. I mean, Franklin Templeton's is being led by a woman. I mean, we're doing very, very well. And we did very, very well even when the leader was a man. So I don't think it makes difference.
Is there any value to be added to an experience of being, of having gone through life as a woman, that organizations could tap into?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think when I look at my own self, and let me just put myself in this lens, I think as a man, I have had, I think my life experiences uh, don't have as many dimensions as that of my wife.
Right. Same
Okay,
over.
yeah, because as a mother, as a daughter, as a daughter-in-law, uh, and as a successful professional, you see a lot more of life than I can ever imagine. And
Mm,
this is one of the things that me and Zainab always have, and she's absolutely right that you know your window of the house is for 4 hours. The
mm,
2 hours that you spend in the house once you wake up before you leave home, and the 2 hours that you're awake after you've come back from work. But there is a lot more in that house, that she experiences, she deals with, that I cannot imagine at all. So I think if you are genuinely looking for, the classical multitasker, the classical IQ and EQ balance, all of those things which obviously leaders are expected to do now, right? I mean, I was just reading an interesting book on CEOs, and a lot of the CEOs now getting judged on the parameter of what's your EQ, right? uh, I think it comes very natural to women. It comes very naturally to women. So I think if you ask me, they actually now have a significant advantage, because as men, and I mean, now, if I was somebody who, let us assume that if I became the caregiver and my wife, had a full-fledged corporate career, perhaps I would have had that advantage,
that's right.
right, of seeing of seeing the full picture,
Mm,
right? But I think Zenab has a far wider lens uh, on the picture of life than I can even imagine. Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's not about man or woman, it's the person who has the caregiving experience, who has a bigger
Yeah.
picture of life,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
and having a
Absolutely.
bigger picture of life.
Yeah.
So
And
women.
I must add this, that we keep talking about caregiving, and I think obviously the conversation that we're having right now is about caregiving to your loved ones at home and so on and so forth. I think we miss out the point that as corporate leaders, you are also expected to be a caregiver at work, professionally.
Lovely.
Professionally. And I
Lovely.
think that that comes very naturally to women because
Mm,
caregiving, they've seen it, right? You
mm,
nurture a child, your children grow up. I mean, today, the teenage pangs that perhaps my kids are growing up with, I think Zainab's far more tuned to that than I can even imagine, right?
mm.
And therefore, I think uh, if you want to genuinely be a leader, caregiving should be a very, very strong suite for you. It should
That's
be a
right.
strong part of your character, because if you don't have that part of it, because I mean, think about it. I mean, I don't do the operational work that has to be done in my organization, because I have team members who are doing a damn efficient job. That, I mean, if I had to do that job, I'd probably mess it up,
Right.
right? Therefore, my role as a leader is that of a caregiver,
That's right.
and I make sure that I give enough to them,
Yes.
so that it allows them to flourish and
That's right.
live a fulfilled corporate, a professional life, uh,
That's right.
right? And I think if it was a woman who was doing this role, I think the dimension and the perspective would be so much wider and better.
So that leads me to the other question. So very well said, Juzer. This is just going to be a very significant part of what we are going to tell many others to think about. Think about managers as caregivers, and it's very important that you have a rich experience for you to be able to forward it to someone else,
Yeah.
right? Now, coming to if, for example, having a caregiving experience is very valuable for managers and leaders, how should that be integrated in our recruitment practices?
Uh, it's a tough question, because you you really don't, you when you're recruiting a candidate, I mean, at best you probably have, an hour, 2 hours, maybe you'll do two such meetings, three such meetings. It's a very, it's like a you're watching, trying to see the world through a keyhole, right? And then you're
Right.
trying to say that, well, you know what, this is going to work. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, but I do try, and when I'm, particularly if I'm recruiting senior leaders, I do try and focus a lot of my conversation on their personal lives,
Right.
because the fact that you've reached 15, 18, 20 years of work experience, you obviously would be good. You couldn't be
That's right.
fluffing around for 20 years of your career and become a senior leader, and now you want to be part of the Franklin team. So I think that's pretty much taken care of. I think when you're recruiting, uh, even whether it is middle management or whether it is senior
Right.
leaders, I think I do try and focus a lot on what's their personal life, what's their background like, where do they stay, what's the family like,
Yeah.
hobbies. uh, I mean, because because that has there's no evidence of that on a resume.
Right.
Right? Because what you do and what you've done in your life, in your corporate life, and what you've achieved, is all written over there, and obviously you do enough ref checks, and you know people, and so on and so forth, right? But I'd like to kind of, so I think it's a tough one. It's a very tough one to have, as to what should you do. But maybe try and at least that's what I do, is to try and compartmentalize both those conversations and give
Right.
more impetus. So I think the senior the leader, my focus is more on to getting to know the person in that, whatever 1 hour conversation, rather than saying that, well, show me how much of gross sales or net sales have you done, because that's irrelevant.
Yeah. A large number of women are not able to, either they get burnt out or are not able to pursue or persevere in their careers because there does not exist a very trustworthy or reliable care economy.
Yeah,
One of the challenges that we have around the world, particularly in India, is that the care economy is underinvested in.
it is.
What do you think organizations can do in order to unlock the potential of women and look at the care economy? So, whether it is from the CSR standpoint or it is from the industry body influence, etc., because let's say there is a trustworthy and a reliable, thriving care economy, it would certainly unlock the productivity of caregivers, both men and women.
Yeah. So I think, and Bhavana, you and I have had this conversation in the past when we met, that, and I agree with you that uh, I think the entire ecosystem of caregiving is just very fragile at this point in time. It's undertrained and it's underinvested, and therefore it's undertrained and
Yes,
underdeveloped, right? S- and to be honest, I've been actually looking for a company to invest in for myself, where I've been going around scouting around for the company, to say that, well, do you really have, and can I find somebody who has a scalable model for caregiving, which
yes,
is for example, maybe partly physical, partly digital, so on and so forth, right? But I think once that gets developed, I think I would feel that that would be like a tremendous support, particularly to to women employees, to women who want to really excel in their career, because at the end of the day, you only have 24 hours,
yeah,
राइट? अगर अगर आप 8 घंटे सोओगे तो आपके पास है ही 16 घंटे, अगर आप बॉम्बे में
right,
रहते हो तो आप 3 घंटे तो ट्रैवल में करोगे, तो what does
right,
it leave you with, right? And
yeah,
then if you have caregiving responsibility at home, that really leaves you with very little time. And as you keep growing in your career, you'll be expected to apply a lot of your uh, mental talent rather than your
yeah,
operational talent, and that
yeah,
requires space, that requires
yeah,
mental space. If you
yeah,
don't have that, you'll struggle. Let's be
yeah,
honest. You'll
yeah,
struggle. So I think if that I think if I don't know, I'm not aware of what the government does in terms of subsidizing, what the government does really in terms of uh, allowing and helping people to kind of start saying that, okay, you know what, let's invest in caregiving platforms,
right,
okay, which allow for a scalable solution. Now I think, people, again, for us, are the caregiving that we look at is very metrocentric, right? I mean,
right,
today you and I would think that, oh, I have an old parent at home or something. But let me tell you, this caregiving is required, I think, across the country. So the lady who works in my house as our house help, she's from Jharkhand, and she has a mother who is not well. She's got
yes,
old parents. She is pretty much on the phone, 3 4
yes,
hours a day, trying to figure out how is the mother, how is the
yes,
father, so on and so forth. She has a mentally different, mentally challenged brother.
yes,
uh, Last year she was actually there for nearly 6 months, okay, in her hometown in Jharkhand, uh, because she was just taking care of her
right,
parents, right? So I think the opportunity is really massive. If I, but and I think, you know, if if there was an ecosystem which could kind of take care of and have caregiving capabilities across the spectrum, and not just look at the metro centric, because then we're thinking of, hey, you know what, how can Bhavana Issar become the next CEO of some ABC corporation, right? But why just Bhavana Issar? Why not Anuma? Okay,
that's
who's
right,
got, yeah, because
that's right,
now, I agree, you may be far more qualified, you're far more educated, you have far more money, but
yes,
are you saying that she cares less for her parents? The answer is no. The answer is no. So how do you make sure that you can uh, offer this across the spectrum? I think is the problem that needs to get solved. But yeah, you need to make a beginning at some place, and maybe doing that in the big cities is perhaps the best place to start. But I think coming back, the opportunity is very large.
I'm going to definitely double click on some of the things that you said, which is that it needs to be scalable and it needs to be repeatable, it needs to be trustworthy. What do you think is the role of technology in all of this? And think about it like a blue skying conversation in which you would say, oh, imagine if I were to imagine a new caregiving paradigm, what would that look like?
Uh, so as I told you, I've been scouting for this startup, which I want to kind of, if I can find something, I'd love to invest in it. Uh, I think the big problem that the world will perhaps see, and again, for us, we look at caregiving as saying that, hey, what can somebody maybe be in the house to provide medicines, or do the
Yeah,
normal kind of caregiving. I think the bigger opportunity in caregiving is just in giving company.
yeah,
Just I think there will be a time where, and we already see that in certain developed markets and very evolved societies, where people are now just dying to have somebody to talk to them. Just pick
that's
up the phone and just have a 15-20 minute, half an hour, 1 hour conversation, just so that that person feels that there is somebody I can go back to.
yeah,
You know, uh, so I think, again, one, we need to look at scale. We need to look at the entire spectrum, and uh, just rethink about the fact that you know uh, caregiving is not about a particular type of caregiving. I mean, there could be so many other types of caregiving
yeah.
uh, that could be. I mean, think about. I mean, I from many years, and I mean, I don't speak about this too often. It's never come up in a conversation. But when I was in college and I was doing my MBA, this is in '95 to '97. On Saturdays for 3 hours, I would actually man a suicidal helpline.
Oh,
Okay, there is a organization called Samaritan Sahara. I
yes,
think it still exists, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, yes.
So I used to actually go on Saturdays for 3 or 4 hours, 2 to 6, if I'm not mistaken, because the center was very close to where I used to stay.
Right.
It's at Baikala only, and I would go and man. Now, obviously, at that time, I wasn't thinking really caregiving, but it is part of that ecosystem. It is
It
part of
is.
that ecosystem, right? I mean, the government's doing so much to say that, well, don't get stressed when exams are happening. That's also
Right.
caregiving,
Yes.
right? The government is now
Yes.
actually saying that, well, we'll actually have two exams. You don't have to worry. If you didn't do well in the first
Yeah.
batch, you can come in the second batch and do the exam,
Yeah.
right? So I think the spectrum of caregiving is huge, and as more and more people start valuing the uh, the emotional quotient of life more than the
That's right.
economic quotient of life, they will they will be then be willing to pay as much as they can to
Yes.
make sure that you can acquire uh, that caregiving for yourself in terms of whatever form you need.
Right.
And the people would need it in different forms, but it should be made available. Unfortunately, over a period of time, it's because many years back, I mean, who paid for so that you could talk to somebody on a suicidal helpline, right? I mean, I didn't get any money for sure, and neither was the person who was calling in paying any money. But today, I think people realize that if I had somebody I could talk to, if I had a form of support, uh, I'm very happy paying for it, and
Yeah.
that could then build a very sustainable revenue generating ecosystem for the world to kind of then capitalize on.
All right. That is going to call for a very nice conversation that I might have beyond this
Sure,
conversation with
sure,
you.
sure. Sure.
And I am so glad for your candid perspective, contrarian views, different ways of looking at the problem. I particularly loved the piece about old gen managers learning from the new generation and recognizing that the world is there is probably something else that's going on in the world. And of course, I think that organizations need to definitely invest in making sure that different kinds of people,
Hmm.
caregivers in general, are also contributing. And there is an open question about how this can be integrated in recruitment.
Yeah.
It's a problem for probably some of the bright HR people to solve, which is what does it take to hire for life experiences and competencies, not just what you have done and can be said on the resume.
Yeah.
Thank you for those incredible insights. Very grateful to have you as an ally for
Always
caregiving.
a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And thank you for making the time today. Any closing remarks that you would like to say as we bring this to an end?
At the core and the principle of it, caregiving needs to come from within you, right? Uh, and you have to be that agent of change, because I always feel that, if you give back, whether professionally, personally, it will come back to you. So, when corporate leaders mentor, it's form of caregiving,
Yeah,
right? It's form of caregiving. uh, and I mean, somebody asked me that, what are your biggest achievements, and I said that the fact that I have at least five of my team members as global leaders in Franklin Temple, and they've worked with me in my organization. I think that's my biggest achievement.
nice.
Not a gross sales or a net sales number, or not a campaign that I have released, or not anything else that I've done. I think because that will stay with them. And
Yes.
I've always told them, I said, the if you want to ever give back to me, you should pick up and mentor five or seven people so that they go up in life. I think that's the most important thing.
So that's indeed a way of building a successful and sustainable organization.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd like to say that at Caregiver Sathi, we are also working with organizations, corporates, to say that how is it that we can build future fit corporates that invest in people, because that is how we nurture success, not just for today but for the coming generations. Thank you so much.